Welcome everybody back to Friar Talk. Today we're going to be talking about José Abreu, doing kind of an introduction into potentially bringing him in. He's been talked about a lot as a potential candidate to get signed to the Padres this season. As we know, big holes at both first base and DH, with Bell and Drury currently on the free agent market. We've talked about a lot of guys that could potentially come in and fill that void. Luke Voigt, I think, is going to be a free agent. You could always talk about, entertaining the idea of bringing him back. JD Martinez, another older guy, kind of similar to José Abreu. Nelson Cruz, actually, his contract option was declined. So there's a lot of guys that are potential candidates for either a DH or first base spot. Now, I feel like probably at the top of the market is going to be José Abreu. Now, for a short-term deal, I believe Abreu is 35 right now. Yeah, 35 right now, so he's going to be 36 next season. The idea is that he was going to get a 2-year, $25 to $30 million contract. Kind of similar to what happened with Nelson Cruz last year. So there's a lot of guys that the Padres could potentially go after. I feel like Drury is still kind of likely to come back, but we don't really know. So, Chase, with all this said, do you like the idea of the Padres going out and signing José Abreu?
Looking at his baseball savant page, there's a lot of red in average exit velo, expected WOBA, max exit velo, hard hit percentage, expecting batting average, expecting slugging. He's all over like 90%. And K percentage, he's doing really good. It's like really hard to say, yeah, I don't want this guy just because of how well he's been hitting. However, we also saw last year that Nelson Cruz had a very similar season and then fell off the face of the earth this season. You just don't know with his age if he's going to be able to keep up doing this. And especially, you got to consider going to Petco Park is going to take away parts of this just because Petco Park was one of the least hitter-friendly parks in all of the MLB. A lot of guys, when they come here, they do not slug as much as they used to. Juan Soto being the most prominent example recently. I mean, he had like 22 home runs before he came to the Padres, and he hit maybe another 5 throughout the entire season, including the postseason. And I think the ones that he hit in the postseason weren't even at Petco. So we don't have a hitting coach, or we do have a hitting coach, but he's a new hire. We have a revolving door. We don't have enough hitting coaches to deal with every single player. So if one guy gets into a slump, we might not be able to get him out of it. I think you can get a little bit cheaper of an option that's better on defense, younger, and may have the same amount of upside. I believe he had 17 home runs. No, he had a 304 average, 15 home runs, 75 RBIs, and an 824 OPS, which is great, but for 15 to 20 mil, or about 15 mil, I think you can go a little cheaper and might be able to get the same production elsewhere because you also have other needs. You have left field, you have starting pitcher, you have first base, maybe reliever if you can find another cheap one, kind of out of the woods like Luis Garcia or Nick Martinez or Robert Torres like you did last year. But there are too many other needs to warrant spending $15 million at first base.
Yeah, and that's how I feel too. I mean, we were talking about it before, the idea of bringing in an Abreu. And it's not like we don't like José Abreu as a player. He's a fantastic player. He's really good. I mean, it would be awesome to plug him into the lineup, have him hit 4th or 5th after your big 3, basically. And he's a great bat. I mean, you look at his numbers last season, over 300 average, almost getting on base at a 40% clip. The slugging went down, but he's still a really good gap-to-gap hitter. I mean, I was showing the Baseball Savant page. You look at the spray chart, it's literally all over the field. It's not like he's a righty pull hitter and he's going to struggle. It's like, no, he's a gap-to-gap hitter. He puts the ball wherever. He's fantastic. Also, defensively, he's not that terrible either. But it's the age question. If you're going to go and sign him to a huge deal for 2 years and he's not the same guy, it's similar to how Nelson Cruz was last year, because we wanted Nelson Cruz. And I think the Padres were in a little bit of a different boat last year just because you had a lot more pitching with Clev, and then you trade for Manaea, and you had Mackenzie Gore, and you had all these guys of like competing for those back end starting roles. But this year, like, you have to go and get 2 starters. Like, if Nick Martinez is one, that's great, but like you still want to get some depth there and stuff. So I think that the needs are there. Now, if the Padres feel like they're in a spot where they're going to go trade for an outfielder that's really cheap. Or let's say that they do believe that Fernando Tatis is going to be in the outfield and they're going to keep Trent Grisham, right? So you're not adding another outfielder. And they're like, we already have this guy we're going to trade for in terms of starting pitching, or we feel like Nick Martinez is going to be a starter all season long. Then maybe you can allocate the resources towards Jose Abreu. But I don't know if the Padres are really in a spot to do that. Like, I think it makes a lot more sense to go after a starter, either Kodai Senga, like we've talked about, or you go and trade for someone else that's on the market that might make a pretty decent amount before you go and sign an aging first base DH guy. I do think he would play first base, though. I don't think he would end up DHing. But you're still going to have to go get another bat. You're still probably going to have to get another corner outfielder. So you have a lot of spots to fill, and it seems like Jose Abreu would produce. He would be great. I don't think that's kind of the argument that we have here. It's just that where you're at right now, if you're not willing to go deep into that luxury tax, it doesn't make that much sense. Now, flip side of it for me, say that the Padres are like, screw it, we're going all in. Like, we want to win this next 2 years. Then yeah, go get Jose Abreu. He's going to help the offense a ton. But that's only if you're really willing to spend a lot of money. And we don't know yet if the Padres are willing to do that. Now, if we see the Padres go out and they trade for guys and they add starting pitching and they're like, screw it, cherry on top, we're going to sign Jose Abreu as well to spark this offense, to add another guy, then it makes sense. But Chase, I think all the stuff that you bring up about there are cheaper options on the market where you're not going to be spending a ton of money for a guy that is like just kind of a bat first base / DH type. There's a lot of other ways that you can go and get that. You can go and get some depth and not really sign like an aging guy. So I don't think we're necessarily against Jose Abreu in general, but I think that we just are kind of looking at it like it doesn't make the most sense if you're the Padres, considering that they probably don't have that much money to spend. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. I feel like you're kind of the same thing there, but anything else you want to add to Jose Abreu?
I think he's a fantastic ball player. I would have loved him on the Padres, like if we tried to do this 2 years ago. I mean, he has been one of the best slugging first basemen in the game for a while. I feel like the White Sox always slandered him a little bit, and then they started to love him a little bit more recently. But no, I mean, we just have way too many holes to fill. I mean, if we had maybe 4 or 5 starters already, and then we just needed a couple depth pieces, yeah, all in on Jose Abreu. But we have no left fielder. We don't know where Tatis is going to play. For some reason, the Padres are linked to the top shorts on the market instead. So I don't know which direction they're heading, and it doesn't look like we have the funds to allocate that money to first base right now.
Yeah, and you bring up the shortstop stuff. I don't know how that would even work out. I'm guessing that the thought is that you're going to move Kim to second, you're going to move Crone to first, so then that would probably take Jose Abreu out of the mix as well. That's also very strange. We'll have to look into that next week. But I feel like that's probably where we're at on Jose Abreu. We're going to talk about Cody Bellinger next week. We didn't want to do it without Isaac. As you guys know, Cody Bellinger has been a guy that Isaac's wanted for quite some time. Brought up Luke Voigt's probably going to be on the market. Like, there's a lot of guys that are going to be available. So we'll see how it plays out. But let us know. Do you think that the Padres should go after Jose Abreu? Or do you think it's one of those things that's maybe more of a wait and see until you fill these other spots and then you figure out first base? Because you look around the league, like there's so many guys that produce at first base for like a couple $1 million and they have over an 800 OPS. Like that happens all the time at that position. So it seems like a spot where you can just kind of plug a bat and just say, all right, we're going to have this guy come in and rake. Is he good at first? Is he good at playing first? No, probably not, but he's still going to be valuable because he's such a great bat. So a lot of options available at first, especially trading as well. But yeah, I think that's probably going to do it for this one. So thank you guys for listening, and we'll be back on Monday.